For centuries, we've been taught to associate unimaginable wealth with familiar names: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Saudi Aramco, modern giants that seem untouchable. But what if all of them combined still wouldn't match the value of a single company that existed hundreds of years ago? A company so powerful that it didn't just trade goods, it shaped nations, invented modern capitalism, and quietly rewired how the world understands money. And yet, almost no one today talks about it. Long before billionaires, hedge funds, or Silicon Valley, there was a quiet Dutch corporation that became the most valuable company in human history. Its peak valuation, adjusted for inflation, is estimated at over $7.9 trillion. This is the story of the Dutch East India Company and the hidden system of power it created. When we think about capitalism and old money, the names that usually come up are the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, or later American industrialists. Rarely do we think about a merchant company founded in the early 1600s in a small European republic. But the Dutch East India Company didn't just participate in capitalism. It invented its core mechanics: the first multinational corporation, the first publicly traded company, the first stock exchange, the first initial public offering. Entire systems that govern global finance today trace their origins back to this single enterprise. And remarkably, the forces behind it never ruled through crowns or empires in the traditional sense. They ruled through capital. To understand how this became possible, we need to step back to the late 16th century. In 1580, Spain absorbed Portugal through a dynastic union, instantly combining two global empires under one crown. Together, they controlled trade routes stretching across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. For the Dutch Republic, which was still fighting for independence from Spanish rule, this was an existential threat. Militarily, they were outmatched. Economically, they were vulnerable. But instead of attempting to compete through force alone, the Dutch built something entirely new: a financial weapon. In 1602, 7 competing Dutch trading companies were merged into one unified entity: the Dutch East India Company, known historically as the VOC. On the surface, it appeared to be another merchant enterprise trading spices and goods from Asia. In reality, it was something far more radical. It was a state-backed corporation with unprecedented powers. The VOC could wage war, sign treaties, build forts, govern colonies, and maintain private armies. It was a sovereign entity disguised as a business, and unlike kingdoms, it didn't rely on taxation or inherited land. It relied on investment. For the first time in history, ordinary citizens could buy shares in a global empire. Instead of wealth being tied to nobility or land ownership, it became something that could be manufactured, scaled, and transferred through markets. This single innovation changed everything. The VOC could raise enormous sums of money without a monarch, without royal debt, and without raising taxes. Its investors shared in the profits, while their personal assets were protected by a revolutionary concept known as limited liability. If a ship sank or a trade route failed, investors lost only what they invested, not their homes or livelihoods. This protection unlocked mass participation and turned speculation into a driving force of empire. Behind this system stood not just merchants, but a powerful dynasty watching from the shadows: the House of Orange-Nassau. Unlike traditional royal families, they ruled no absolute kingdom at the time. Their titles were weak, their political position unstable, and their future uncertain. But they understood something others did not. Power was shifting. Land and crowns were becoming less important than capital and control over markets. Instead of resisting this change, they embraced it. The House of Orange did not directly manage the VOC, but they tied their fate to it financially and politically. Over time, their involvement became formal. Descendants of the House of Orange served as high-ranking officials and presidents of both the Dutch East India Company and the Dutch West India Company. Without wearing crowns, they became some of the most powerful figures in Europe. Their authority was no longer backed by divine right, but by dividends. At its height, the VOC operated like an empire. It controlled hundreds of ships, employed tens of thousands of people, and commanded private armies across Asia. Over 1 million Europeans sailed under its banner during its existence, not as explorers or settlers, but as corporate employees. They built ports, guarded warehouses, enforced monopolies, and reshaped entire regions to serve corporate interests. Nowhere was this more evident than in the East Indies, modern-day Indonesia, where the VOC established Batavia, its Asian headquarters, and ruled for centuries. This scale of operation required enormous and continuous capital flows. To sustain it, the Dutch created another financial breakthrough, a permanent secondary market where shares could be freely bought and sold. This became the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the first of its kind. Investors weren't just buying ownership, they were betting on the future. Speculation, hedging, and derivatives all emerged from this environment. Tools still used on Wall Street today were being tested centuries earlier in Dutch coffee houses and trading floors. As VOC shares surged in value, rising nearly tenfold over its lifespan, a culture of financial participation took hold. Wealth was no longer static. It moved, multiplied, and concentrated. And as Dutch financial systems matured, their influence spread far beyond the Netherlands. One man would carry these ideas directly into the heart of another empire, William of Orange. Raised within the Dutch financial system, he understood the power of public credit and capital markets. In 1688, when England faced a political crisis, William was invited to take the throne alongside his wife, Mary. What followed wasn't just a political shift, but a financial revolution. Under William's reign, England established the Bank of England, introduced government bonds, and funded wars through debt markets. Dutch financial innovations were embedded into British law, forever changing how states financed power. These ideas crossed the Atlantic as well. Dutch traders established New Amsterdam on the southern tip of Manhattan in the early 1600s. Even after the British seized it and renamed it New York, they retained much of the Dutch legal and financial structure. Credit systems, property rights, and commercial norms survived. Over time, these foundations helped transform a small port town into the financial capital of the modern world. Yet, despite its power, the VOC was not invincible. By the late 18th century, corruption, mismanagement, rising competition, and unsustainable military costs weakened the company. Global markets began rejecting monopolies. Decision-making slowed, profits declined. In 1796, the Dutch government nationalized the company, ending nearly 2 centuries of corporate dominance. The empire collapsed, but its blueprint survived. Today, the Netherlands is no longer a colonial power, but it remains a financial one. It consistently ranks among the world's top destinations for global capital. Trillions of dollars flow through Dutch corporate structures, investment vehicles, and legal frameworks. Modern giants like Royal Dutch Shell carry echoes of this legacy, blending corporate power with historical royal connections. The House of Orange still reigns ceremonially, but its influence through capital networks remains significant. However, this legacy cannot be separated from its dark side. The VOC committed severe atrocities during its expansion. Massacres, forced labor, exploitation, and the destruction of indigenous societies were integral to its success. From the Banda Islands massacre to brutal suppression across Southeast Asia, the company enforced profit through violence. These crimes are not footnotes, they are central to the story. The Dutch East India Company proved something that still defines our world today: that markets can rival governments, that capital can replace crowns. That power does not always announce itself with flags and armies. Sometimes, it moves silently through balance sheets, shares, and financial systems that outlive empires. And that brings us to the question that still matters today. If markets now hold the power once reserved for kings, and corporations can shape nations without firing a shot, then who truly governs the world when the crown is invisible?